Hello everyone, welcome back to English class. So today we are going to read a lesson from the textbook First Language English and lesson number 2, that is the Elixir of Life, written by Sir C.V. Raman. Before moving forward, let us look at a brief biography about the author or the writer. Sir Chandrasekhara Venkata Raman, famously known as Sir C.V. Raman, was born on 7th November 1888 in Tiruchirappalli, which was at that time comes under Madras Presidency, and later he died on 21st November in 1970 in Bangalore. And he was well known for his discovery in the science, that is Raman effect or light scattering. Sir C.V. Raman has contributed a lot to the science field, especially to the physics, and because he had discovered Raman effect, he was awarded with the Nobel Prize in 1930, and in the same year he was also honored with Knight Bachelor, which was given to him by the King George. And in 1954, Sir C.V. Raman was awarded with Bharat Ratna, and later in 1957 he was honored with International Lenin Peace Prize, which is given by Russia. So now let us read the lesson The Elixir of Life, written by Sir C.V. Raman. Let us see what is he talking about here. What is the real elixir of life? Man has through the ages sought in vain for an imaginary elixir of life, the divine amrita, to confer immortality, but the true elixir of life lies near to our hands, for it is the commonest of all liquids, plain water. The elixir of life. Here, elixir is nothing but the divine potion. So, according to Sir C.V. Raman, man has through the ages sought in vain for an imaginary elixir of life. So, throughout the civilization or throughout the years, man has been trying to gain an imaginary elixir of life. Sought is nothing but the past form of the verb seek. That means he attempted to find in vain. That means throughout the ages he tried to find it, but it went without success. So why he was, or the man was in search of an imaginary elixir of life? To confer immortality, to gain the eternal life. But the true elixir of life lies near to our hands, for it is the commonest of all liquids, plain water. So as Raman says, man has been trying to find out an imaginary elixir of life, which is unattainable, and in reality which we cannot get it. But the true elixir, in the reality, the true elixir of life, it lies near our hands. And what is that? It is nothing but the commonest of all liquids, that is the plain water. So, the plain water is the true elixir of life. I remember one day standing on the line which separates the Libyan desert from the valley of the Nile in Egypt. On one side was visible a sea of billowing sand without a speck of green, or a single living thing anywhere visible on it, while on the other side lay one of the greenest, most fertile and densely populated areas to be found anywhere on the earth, teeming with life and vegetation. What made this difference? What made this wonderful difference? Why? It is the water of the river Nile flowing down to the Mediterranean from its sources, a couple of thousands of miles. Sir C.V. Raman recollects his memory. Once he was standing on the line which separates the Libyan desert from the valley of the Nile in Egypt. Dear students, imagine the map of African continent, and on the top of that we find the huge desert, Sahara Desert, and in the north part we also come across a country called Libya, and the desert which is in the country Libya is called Libyan Desert. Once Sir C.V. Raman was standing on the line which separates the Libyan desert from the valley of the Nile in Egypt. So in Egypt we can see that to the eastern part there is a valley of Nile, and to the west lies Libyan desert. So what is the difference? Why is he mentioning this memory? So he says on one side was visible a sea of billowing sand without a speck of green or a single living thing anywhere visible on it. So when you look towards the west, that is Libyan desert, on that side only a sea of billowing sand. Sea of means a vast area of sand without a speck. Speck means a tiny spot. So on that vast desert there was not even a small speck of greenery or a single living thing anywhere visible on it. We cannot find a living thing as well as a tiny spot of greenery. While on the other side, when you look at the eastern side, there lies one of the greenest, most fertile and densely populated areas. So on the eastern side of the Nile Valley, we can witness one of the greenest and most fertile. Fertile means very productive and densely populated, very thickly populated areas to be found anywhere on the earth, which is teeming with life and vegetation, which is full of life and vegetation. So what a huge difference. Yes. So to the west of the Nile Valley we can only see a vast desert, but to the eastern side of the Nile River we can witness one of the greenest and fertile land which is highly populated. So what made this difference? What made this wonderful difference, and why? So here is the answer. It is the water of the river Nile flowing down to the Mediterranean from its sources a couple of thousands of miles away. So because of the river Nile we can see this kind of wonderful difference. So as you see here in the map of Egypt, we can see that Nile River flows from south to north through the eastern Africa. So it begins in the rivers that flows into Lake Victoria, which is around Uganda, Tanzania and Kenya. And Nile River flows into the Mediterranean Sea. So it flows more than 6,600 kilometers to the north. So this is one of the longest river in the world. Because of this flow, because of this river Nile, we can see such wonderful difference in that region. Geologist tells us that the entire soil of the Nile Valley is the creation of the river itself. It was brought down as the finest silt in its flood waters from the highlands of Abyssinia and from remote Central Africa, and laid down through the ages in the trough through which the Nile flows into the sea. Egypt, in fact, was made by its river. Its ancient civilization was created and is sustained by the life-giving waters, which come down year after year with unfailing regularity. So, when you hear the opinion of geologists are nothing but a specialist or a scientist who study Earth's material or elements. So according to the geologist, the entire soil of the Nile Valley is the creation of the river itself. So the fertile land is the result of the flow of the river. It was brought down as the finest silt in its floodwater. So each and every river, when it's flowing, it carries along with it fine sands, clay, and other materials, and it carries along with it and spreads over on the banks of the river. So according to the geologist, Nile River carries finest silt. Silt is nothing but the sediments or the fine sand, clay, and other materials. And it carries it from the highlands of Abyssinia. Abyssinia is also comes under Ethiopian countryside. So, and from there, and as I said, Nile River flows from the Central Africa towards the Mediterranean Sea. When it flows, it carries down a lots of materials. It may be sand or clay and other material. So it flows through the ages in the trough. Trough means here a channel or a trench through which Nile flows into the sea. Egypt, in fact, was made by its river. See this statement. Egypt, in fact, was made by its river. So whatever agricultural production or the civilization development or sustainable or surviving quality, everything is because of the Nile River. Its ancient civilization was created and is sustained by the life-giving waters, which come down year after year with unfailing regularity. So even we have seen in our history or sociology or in science book that each and every civilization had started on the banks of the river. Here, the writer is also emphasizing that fact that ancient civilization was created and sustained by the life-giving water. Here, it is the Nile River, which comes down year after year without the fail. I give this example and could give many others to emphasize that this common substance which we take for granted in our everyday life is the most potent and the most wonderful thing on the face of our earth. It has played a role of vast significance in shaping the course of the earth's history and continues to play the leading role in the drama of life on the surface of our planet. Now, he is telling us the reason behind recollecting that memory or mentioning the importance of water while giving the example of Nile River. He says he can give or he could give many other examples to show that why the water is important. And this common substance is nothing but the water which we take for granted, which we are not giving enough significance or importance in our day-to-day life, is the most potent. Potent means powerful. Powerful and most wonderful thing on the face of our earth. Why? Because it has played a role of vast significance in the shaping of the course of Earth's history. So when we read history, we can see that rain or water has played a major role in changing the course of the history, changing the lives of people. So throughout the ages, it has been the reason for many war, even changing the shape of the life. And until now, it continues to play the leading role in the drama of life. So that we can see now in the present scenario, it is very vital that even now water plays a major role in our life. It may be in a political life or social life. Yes, so according to Sir C.V. Raman, throughout the history, water has played a significant role in changing the course of history, as well as in the present scenario, it is still leading a role, a major role in the drama of life that is on the surface of our planet. So what is the imaginary elixir of life according to Sir C.V. Raman? The divine amrita is the imaginary elixir of life. The writer is calling the divine portion as an imaginary elixir because first of all it is completely a fantasy and it is unattainable. In reality, one cannot get access to such divine portion. That's why it is an imaginary elixir. Then, what according to the writer is the real elixir of life? So, according to Sir C.V. Raman, water is the real elixir of life because it lies near to our hands. Because of the water, we can see a reshaping or restructuring of human race. Yes, most of the civilization has sustained only because of the water. That's why water is the real elixir of life. What is the wonderful difference the writer talks about in the passage? Yes, on one side was the visible sea of billowing sand without a speck of green or a single living thing anywhere on it. On the other side lay one of the greatest, most fertile and densely populated areas to be found anywhere on the earth, teeming with life and vegetation. This is the wonderful difference that the writer talks about in the passage. Yes, by giving the example of Libyan desert and Nile valley, he talks about the wonderful difference. What brought about this wonderful difference? So this wonderful difference was brought by the water of the river Nile flowing down to the Mediterranean from its sources a couple of thousands of miles away. So as I said, it flows more than 6,600 kilometers from Central Africa towards Mediterranean Sea in the north. Because of this course of water, this wonderful difference can be seen even now. So the rest of the lesson we will reach in our next period.